My name is Chris Stevens, and I'm the Executive Director at JP Morgan Chase in Rhode Island, and also a board member at Fountainhead, Rhode Island. And so I want to welcome you all to our second educational event of this season for Fountainhead. Tonight our topic is going to be on the future of currency and blockchain technology and its future use cases. Not intended to be any form of investment advice here, right? So, I think we're going to, really enjoy a conversation from some great experts, whether you're new to, the digital finance discussion or you consider yourself a technical expert. I think there's going to be something here for everybody. So, before I introduce our moderator and our panelists, I just wanted to do a brief overview of Fountainhead, Rhode Island for anybody who's new here today. Fountainhead is a 501c3 non-profit organization headquartered in Rhode Island. And our core mission is to connect like-minded individuals from diverse backgrounds who share a similar passion, vision, and ambition for moving Rhode Island forward. At this point, it's a community of over 1,200 individuals around the globe, and we're really excited about what we're doing here. In addition to networking and educational events like this, we host community spotlights and individual spotlights for people who are doing great things in their communities. And so, for those of you, if you're not already following us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, we would encourage you to do so. Hear about these stories and take part in these events that we're doing. You can follow us at Fountainhead RI or on our website at fountainheadri.org. We couldn't host events like this if it wasn't for our sponsors. And so I just want to take a moment to thank the Washington Trust Company and Rhode for their support of the event this evening. So at this point, I'm going to introduce our moderator and our speakers, and then I'll hand it over to Joan. So first we have Joan Bigham, and she is a managing director for the Blockchain Research Institute, and she is joined by Arnell Milhouse, who is the CEO of CareerDevs Computer Science Institute. We have Liz Dan, Rhode Island Commerce Secretary. And last but not least, we have Brendan Quinn, who is the founder and managing director of Cantilever Advisors. So,
thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. I come from a faraway place called Mystic, Connecticut. And it was delightful to barge through Providence rush hour traffic to come here and meet you all. I'm delighted to be invited. And we've just met for the first time. We've had some great conversations already. And my role is to moderate these highly qualified people to my left. And we'll have a great conversation about what's happening today with cryptocurrency, what's going to happen in the future, how we're applying blockchain and other technologies to use cases. And we want you to learn as much as possible. We're going to save questions for the end, but I suggest if we hit a note or use a word that you don't know anything about, please interrupt us for clarification. We'll take questions at the end, but if you need clarification, don't hesitate. We have experts here. So let me give them a chance to introduce themselves. You heard that I'm the managing director for the Blockchain Research Institute. My focus is primarily global. Of course, all the technologies we're talking about are extremely global. And I travel around the world talking about blockchain. Our research is available online. Most of it is public and available to you. blockchainresearchinstitute.org. If you go there, you will see hundreds of use cases and research that's available to share. So let me pass the mic over to Arnell Milhouse, and each of the panelists will introduce themselves.
Thank you so much, Joan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It is amazing to be here at Fountainhead, Rhode Island. I am super excited to speak here. And as Joan mentioned, my name is Arnell Milhouse. I'm the co-founder and CEO of CareerDevs Computer Science Institute. And what we do is we're trying to transform the landscape here in Rhode Island and anyone in the hospitality industry or other industries might get mad at me. So I'm looking at you, Ed Brady. What we do is we take people that are in moderately low-wage careers, adults, average age around 27, 28 years old. They go through a one-year program through our school. They learn to become computer scientists, software engineers, and they graduate with a minimum of $50,000 a year as a job, but on average around $70,000 to $80,000. And so we believe that that is the way forward for our state, and I'm just really, really excited to be here. I have my business partner, co-founder Cliff here, and one of our other associates, Gabriel, here, and some of our students, the CareerDevs students. Can you guys raise your hands as well? So if anyone's looking to hire a great software engineer, we have them in bushels.
Thanks, Arnell. Get that one working. Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Liz Tanner. I'm really excited to be here. You know, Jason, David, have I been at the first event I think you guys ever had, or very close to the first one? So
Very consistent.
So I have, feel it was a little bit of an interruption, but really great to be back here with the organization. It's done such a great job. I'm so glad to see Chris involved as well. And I committed to doing this, I think, in February or March, like a really long time ago. So at that time, I was the director of the Department of Business Regulation, which is the state agency that regulates all banking and financial institutions. So I have some experience in the financial sector to be able to be here, but I'm also doing a lot in the distributed ledger blockchain space in government. But I have since, a month and a half ago, I received a promotion, and I am now the Secretary of Commerce for the state. So it's really exciting to be here. I think this might be one of my first public speaking events in that space, so it's kind of exciting to be here. So thank you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Good evening. Brendan Quinn. Great to be with you all. Excited to be part of this esteemed panel here. It's an honor. So I am the founder and managing partner of a firm called Cantilever Advisors, and our mission statement is to bridge the gap into the Bitcoin and digital asset ecosystem through both education and a Bitcoin first, not only Bitcoin first investment philosophy. So excited to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Okay, here we go. So I want us to kick this off with a little context setting. I spoke to Brendan about this earlier, but I think I can read this without my glasses. This is from a Grayscale report that just came out. This is a very exciting time to be talking about these issues because, as you know, in the news, in the literature, in the technology, everything is happening right now. It's changing. It's moving. I could tell you what I thought I knew, and I'd read a headline tonight, and I find out that it's not true anymore. So you've got to stay with it and keep learning. But this is some context. October 31st, 2008. I've been working on a new electronic cash system that's fully peer-to-peer with no trusted third party. Satoshi Nakamoto. That was the initiation of the Bitcoin network. And that's when it started. And if you think you're behind the curve, you're not. You're just jumping on the bandwagon now. And that was the beginning of what now is a billions of dollar market of coins and digital assets. And I've asked Brendan to kind of kick us off with a glimpse of the market today since 2008. Where are we? What's happening out there, Brendan?
Thanks, Joan. Yeah, it's beautiful words. Satoshi Nakamoto. Dropping 13 years ago now, 15 years ago now. Really, I think this space to date, and still to this day, the prevailing narrative is really around investment, and I think that's not the right way to be about it. I mean, the media really glopped on to get rich quick, pump and dumps, like have one stay poor, all these vernaculars. There is actually much more to the digital asset and crypto and Bitcoin ecosystem than you're hearing in kind of mainstream media. And really, there's a tremendous amount of innovation, and not just innovation that's actually working, and there's product market fit operating at global scale already. And to Joan's point, we are so early in this revolution that things are just getting started. But just to contextualize some of that with some examples, if you think about just Bitcoin itself, the asset, I mean, in 15 years, it has risen from a white paper to a bona fide global macro asset at this point, and it's really becoming a digitally native expression of a political store of value in the same way that gold has existed throughout various monetary and financial systems throughout the world for thousands of years. Thinking about payments, you have, Bitcoin is not just an asset, but it's also a distributed network associated with it that's powered by a blockchain or distributed ledger technology. That facilitates the ability to transfer value across the world instantaneously with censorship resistance for free. If you think about relevant, anyone here sent a bank wire, domestic or international, I mean, everyone knows how much of a pain that experience is. But it's not just Bitcoin. In the same vein, you have stable coins. That's a huge innovation, both from a payments perspective and very much a similar way to Bitcoin. But also, if you think about stable coins and really what that most of the stable coins in the world are pegged to the US dollar, what that's doing is providing like a savings technology in a lot of ways for emerging markets that don't have the privilege of being able to have the access to the US dollar that more developed economies have. So that is a huge innovation that's already at scale. Billions and billions of dollars of stable coins in circulation. Yes.
Security alert. So,
Someone check your wallet, check your hash phrase,
Yeah.
your seed phrase.
so Brendan, tell us about the market today. What do you see happening, this bear market for cryptocurrency?
In the bear market specifically, I mean, I think it's just the beat goes on. Like price action is noise, and it's like that is. I mean, that's what people like to talk about because it's exciting and it's like up, it's down, it's volatile, it's rich or poor. No, it's like. I mean, I spend most of my time in this space in the monetary and the financial aspects of this. So like, think about like decentralized finance or DeFi for short. I mean, there's already applications at scale that are facilitating peer-to-peer lending, peer-to-peer exchange, that like bringing real-world like assets, like real estate, tokenizing real-world assets like real estate, land onto the blockchain. And really, if you kind of fast forward 10 years, I mean, certainly in my view, I think probably the panel would agree, like this distributed ledger technology, this blockchain technology is really going to be the bedrock of, a digitally native monetary and financial across the world. And that's, again, we're so early, like Bitcoin at whatever it's trading at today, I don't even know what its price is today, like who cares? It doesn't matter. It's just.
But I think the literature says that we've been through three swings with Bitcoin already. This is the third one, and I think it will continue. It's a normally fluctuating asset. But speaking of application and speaking of the foundation of this technology, blockchain, we dispatch the word blockchain like everybody knows what blockchain is. Blockchain is the foundation. But it's a very complex technology, which is becoming more complex by the day. I just want to add to the tokenization reference that tokenization is a way in which all of these networks create value and distribute and create wealth. There are 9, in our taxonomy, there are 9 different types of tokens. And a crypto coin or a Bitcoin is only one. And there are 9 other categories, including utility tokens, security tokens, NFTs, which you've heard of. So remember, there's a whole range of possibilities. But going back to the Blockchain Foundation, I want to go to Liz because she's been in this space for a long time and can tell us a little bit more about the foundational technology. And I want to add also that Liz won an award from us last year for being a leader in the blockchain space. So congratulations for you. And go ahead.
Thank you.
So I'll tell you how I came to this world. I was hired in 2015 by then Governor Gina Raimondo to make it easier to do business because Rhode Island constantly ranks poorly. And so I'm an attorney who has opened up over 350 businesses, and I've owned several businesses myself. So it was very exciting for me to be able to come to state government and say, I want to fix the stuff that made me crazy. You know, the stuff that as an attorney, it was so hard for my clients to do X, Y, and Z, and I just wanted to fix all that. So when I came in, I said, you know what, let me see what other states do, and let's see who does stuff better. So what I discovered was that no state does it any better than us. I mean, you know, there's tax differences, you know, there's certain infrastructure things, but at the end of the day, everybody does it the same way. And I'm talking about like the administrative function of how to organize a business. So I started looking internationally and discovered that there's actually an award that is given out. Tell me if it's me, first of all, I guess. Okay. So is there, you know, tell me if there's an award that actually goes to foreign countries for how to do business. So I started looking at Vietnam kept winning the award, Singapore, and Estonia. And I discovered the country of Estonia. And as a Lithuanian, I was like, oh, wow, they're actually close to each other. What's this whole country of Estonia? Long story short, Estonia has this part of the job, right? I do a lot of speaking. But Estonia is a truly incredible model that I started paying attention to. And about 20 years ago, for many political reasons for them, they started changing the way they do government. And when I started studying what they do, I said, I want to try to make Rhode Island a model for that. We're actually very similar countries, about the same size geography, about the same size population. And so I started saying, all right, I'm going to look at Estonia. And then maybe a year into the work I was doing looking at Estonia, they started saying they were using blockchain technology. And I'm like, what is this blockchain? I have no idea what it is. And I spent way too much time trying to figure out how it works. So for those of you who are new in this space, don't even bother, right? It's like trying to figure out how an email physically gets from one box to another. Do you really care? You don't care, right? Like all you care about is the fact that it gets from one place to another, and it makes my life sometimes easier depending on how many you get, right? So I said, all right, I want to figure this out. So anyway, I did a ton of research, and at the same time, that's when crypto really started on this sort of, it was the first or second wave, I can't remember what it was. And we did two things that were in this sort of space. First, from a crypto standpoint, we said, what is this? What are we going to do about it? And, you know, for those of you who know about crypto and you hear about Wyoming, I've got like a little bit of a competition going with Wyoming. So I feel like I'm going to speak openly here. Please do not tell the folks in Wyoming that I'm about to share this. But, you know, they like to say that they've got the most legislation and they've passed the most laws and they're the most crypto friendly. The reality is that they were one of about a dozen states that didn't have good financial services laws to even allow for crypto. The reality is that Rhode Island is one of, say, 38 states that had laws that said, sure, you can come in. We don't care. You don't have to change the laws for it. Wyoming had to change a ton of their laws to even allow for it, which is one of the main reasons they get recognized all the time for having the most pieces of legislation, but it's because they had to. So in Rhode Island, we didn't have to do much. The only thing we had to do is we reached out to about 100 crypto folks and said, what should we do? And they said, we'd have to get 2 licenses to operate in your state. Can you make it 1? So guess what? I talked to Leader Shikarchi. We did. He was the leader at the time. Now he's the speaker. So we have now 1 crypto license in Rhode Island, which is very exciting. Congratulations. And that was 2017, I think, maybe 18. So we did that. But what we heard was we want to have a regulatory sandbox. We want to be able to try out new things in Rhode Island. So we welcomed the industry to come to us and let them try things out. So we are continuing to work with them, saying to them, maybe you need a license, maybe you don't, but use us as a testing space. So we're very friendly to the industry as far as letting them try things. The reality is that the federal government really has to do the regulation piece. And so we're all kind of stuck in this space of not being able to do too much until the feds really come out, of which big changes have happened in the last few months. And so we're really excited to see what happens. From a crypto aspect, as the regulator, one of the things that I want to make clear is, you know, I'm the Debbie Downer probably in the room about crypto. You know, we talk about the ups and the downs. You know, my $300 investment has been $800, it's been $11. You know, it goes up and down. But for those of you who have money to play with and have fun, I highly encourage it, right? Because it's almost like gambling. You never know what's going to happen. But if you're talking about big tons of money, one of the things that I always like to make clear is that any traditional financial institution will insure your dollars up to $250,000 for anything that happens to that bank. the crypto industry has no protections like that whatsoever. So if you lose, you lose. You know, something happens to whoever's holding your money. So I always like to try to point that out. Again, I'm the Debbie Downer in the room to talk about that. But permanent investment vehicle, if you're not worried about it, have fun. But if you are worried, if you're going over 250,000, or if you don't have it to lose, then I would recommend being careful.
So regulation can be protection as well as limitation, and you've got to look at it from both angles. So we're going to talk more about blockchain, more about the technology. I want to ask Arnell. Let me just give him a data point. A recent study done by one of the major accounting firms said that of the hundreds of CFOs they interviewed, 78% said that they would be going into DeFi and blockchain technologies in the future. They checked off yes. Only 28% of them are willing to do it now. And this is a big question. What is it that's causing the resistance? What are the limitations of blockchain today? And I thought maybe Arnell could illuminate that for us.
Testing. First of all, this is a great panel because we're not all on the same page, but we are on the same mic. We're not all on the same page. We have different opinions about really important aspects of this industry, and which is one of the reasons why I really have appreciated the conversations that we've had so far. We're challenging each other. And in terms of technology adoption of Bitcoin, I'm in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general from a purely scientific perspective, from an advancement of society perspective. And science in history is poetic. It rhymes, it repeats, and you can see patterns in history. If you think about the petroleum industry, when they first started discovering oil and digging for it, what was one of the things that they discarded when they were processing petroleum for use? Gasoline was thrown away. They didn't understand the application or use case for gasoline yet. The first cars didn't run on gasoline. They ran on two types of power sources? Electricity and steam. Who would have thought, right? Elon Musk isn't that innovative. The first cars, been there, done that. But it took a while for them to understand how to best utilize and create utility for this invention. The same thing with the airplane. Everyone applauded the Wright brothers when they flew in the airplane, and then when they asked the crowd, who wants to go up next? No one raised their hand, right? Because people knew that it wasn't mature enough, it wasn't safe enough. And I believe we're still in those early formative stages of development. And the reason why the price performance is up and down, one, it's because of this, as Joan alluded to, this halving pricing process in Bitcoin. Every 3 years, the amount of Bitcoin that gets rewarded in mining gets cut in half. And so it spikes when it gets cut, and then it drops about 70% in its price action. You see that happening this year. But the other reason why there isn't stability across the plane is because, like the automobile in the early airplanes, there hasn't been a discovery that can be used at scale. It's not scalable. You can't really, the world can't use Bitcoin today. It would crash the network. It would use 10,000% of the world's electricity. And so there are a lot of things that need to be fixed. We need to create the catalytic converter. We need to create brakes, which is nice for a car.
Can you explain that a little bit further? Take that, what blockchain needs, what the limitations of blockchain today, scaling, energy costs. Could you just elaborate that?
Yeah, so right now in financial processing, Visa is the gold standard. They process about 40,000 transactions per second. And Bitcoin, it's about 2,000 or 1,000 per second. Ethereum is maybe 5,000 per second. And then you have some others like Cardano and Solana, which are working on doing it higher. But it hasn't been perfected yet. So what you're seeing now, like people like Gabe, Cliff, and myself, we're up. Last night we were up to like 1 o'clock. Every night we're up to like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, working on inventing solutions to make things more scalable and usable for the masses. And once that happens, then the dust will begin to settle, and you'll start seeing stability in pricing, but also an ascent to a place that will stabilize. And so it's super important that you focus on the utility. How are these technologies being used to invent things that make your life better? That's the signal that you're looking for. When you see that, that's when things will really start to get interesting.
That's great, and that really brings us to a discussion about the application of the technology, use cases, where does it exist? We said that nothing's really come to scale yet, but that's not entirely true. There are things scaling up around us, and Liz is working on a project for Rhode Island, I know, that may have some potential. Do you want to tell us about that?
Great. So so as much as I'm the Debbie Downer about some of the financial aspects of it, I absolutely love and adore blockchain because I see the absolute potential for it, and I do think it's going to be a game changer for just about everything in our lives eventually. So when I talked about trying to make it easier to do business and looking at other countries, what Estonia really does is you receive a digital identity, and at 20 years into it, you now receive it at birth. So it's like a social security number, right? And so what you can do from that is, at this point, there are so many applications on their system that you can apply to college, you can get your pharmaceutical prescription, you can get any license or permit with government, you can apply for any kind of social benefits. You could do all of those things because you go into a system. It knows that you are who you are, and then I don't have to enter in Liz Tanner lives at 123 Main Street ever again, right? So think about the forms you have to fill out. You fill out the same forms every time, right? And from my perspective, it's all about the business. And so the business, if your restaurant is called the ABC Restaurant, sometimes you call it the ABC Restaurant, sometimes you call it ABC Restaurant, and sometimes you call it ABCs. That's a nightmare in government, right? Because that's 3 different names, and nobody really knows if you're really all the same one. So when you're able to enter it and just have one name, one address, it's infinitely better for government. And so that's what we're working to create. So we did a pilot program. We've been working on this for several years. We put out an RFP saying, tell us how we can make this happen. We had over 60 ideas from over 30 companies. That's never happened like that in Rhode Island before. We chose one, and we did a pilot where we created a digital identity so that you prove you are who you are through your driver's license with the Department of Motor Vehicles, and then you are able to retrieve your credential to be a certified public accountant. The most boring application you could possibly imagine for this, right? Talk about boring. But you know what? We're the first in America to do anything even remotely close to that.
And Liz, yes, great. A little more clarification here. So one of the benefits of data being on the blockchain, and it's data, but it's data in a new form, is that you own your data. You're not giving your identity to the state of Rhode Island. You're not giving it to Gmail Pay. Just talk a little bit about the ownership of the data and where that goes.
So we're at some point when it gets built out, right? And so we proved it. We just finished the project actually June 30th. It was a 2-year project, and we have received $2.5 million to take it to the next level. Because the intent is for you to know when government is looking at your data, right? So when somebody's looking into your credit score or your tax information or whatever, you're going to know that someone looked at it and you have control over it, and you can only, you'll make sure that only the information that you want shared can be shared. So for example, there will be a version of a data lake, so it has my basic information, the stuff you can Google about me. But I don't want everybody to have my social security number. Only the Division of Taxation should have my social security number. I don't want my employees' information necessarily shared. So their social security numbers will only be with, let's say, the Department of Labor and Training. So we're setting it up in a way that you have control over it, you'll understand who's looking at it, and the government can only access what they should be accessing, but it also makes your life infinitely easier because you enter through a singular database versus the multiple databases that you use or physically driving to fill out paper forms and writing checks.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's hear it for the Department of Motor Vehicles. So let's go back to Brendan for a minute, because we talked about crypto, we talked about Bitcoin, but since Bitcoin, there have been a lot of innovations in DeFi, and the smart contract came along, which made it possible to do financial services in a lot of new ways. Could you talk a little bit about how that's impacted your industry?
Yeah, I think...
What is a smart contract?
Yeah, a smart contract is basically like, think of any business contract, legal contract, and instead of it being like vis-a-vis the law and like you're dealing with a lawyer and an accountant, it's adjudicated by code.
And so this is any trade, this is any transaction, this is any sort of exchange of value is being digitized. So I mean, payments is an interesting example for that. And, the idea of being able to, facilitate cross-border, frictionless, censorship-resistant payments for free at the speed of light is incredible. Whereas, previously you'd have to contract with a bank to send the wire, to deal with Western Union, to there's a lot of intermediaries and middle people that are being paid and compensated to facilitate that transaction. Whereas when you're leveraging distributed ledger technology, crypto, you can do that in a much more efficient, expedient, and with a better consumer experience.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so the smart contract really broke open the possibility of doing all kinds of things, some of which you've heard of, NFTs being one of them. And NFTs have to do with artists and musicians being able to put their assets onto the blockchain and protect it, and then have revenue come their way. And that doesn't happen easily. It happens through smart contracts, which are created by people like the people that Arnell educates to build these technologies. ESGs being the goals that serve humanity, environment, government, society. And where can blockchain make a contribution there? There have been a lot of criticism of impact on environment and energy, but you're looking at new ways to crack through that. So tell us what you're doing.
I believe the goals of scalability are aligned with humanity. Initially, and one of the reasons why I believe the federal government hasn't brought about a lot of regulation is because they want the messy inventors to experiment and try things. And then once the landscape is drafted and figured out, then they'll come in with regulation that is necessary and needed. But in terms of the scalability, Satoshi, when he first launched Bitcoin January 3rd, 2009, the Genesis block, it wasn't in its final form. He knew, she knew, or they knew,
Whoever they were.
whoever they are. I think it's Liz. Satoshi. But they knew that the platform would evolve. Again, with the original format and design of Bitcoin, it wasn't scalable for a peer-to-peer. If you look at the title, right, a peer-to-peer payment system. That's the top of the Bitcoin white paper. And so things are going to evolve and get better, and they will. The people that are complaining that it's using too much energy, we understand that, but they're mutually exclusive. You can't scale Bitcoin with that current platform, so it's going to take care of itself, the environmental part. And then in terms of the social and the governance, I'm probably the craziest one up here, because I believe in DAOs and the ability to disintermediate, everything. At least the ability to try. And it's best to try and land and see where the dust settles. That's what's really important in this time here. So I believe the power of blockchain gives each individual the power of ownership. That if you're a creator currently on platforms, let's say YouTube or Facebook, you're actually the product if you're the creator. But on the future platforms of tomorrow for artists, for singers, for composers, if you're the creator, you own it all, and then the platforms will come to you for a slice of your value. And this is all been about store of value. Bitcoin is a global store of value, the same role that gold is playing. But now we have creatives. If you're a creative, if you're a restaurateur, if you're a car manufacturer, no matter what form of creative value you bring into the planet, blockchain is going to allow you to capture the majority of that value that you contribute.
Yeah, Liz.
So, it's interesting that you're saying that, because for me, what's fascinating to me about it all is the potential uses, right? So do you mind if I talk about some? So we're actually working on doing a podcast where we talk to people about the different uses of blockchain, because everybody knows about crypto, but not everybody understands really how to use the other stuff. And so First, I want to acknowledge Jim Mason over here. Jim, if you want to understand how we did all that stuff, I am not the tech person. Jim was the tech person. Put your hand up, Jim, so everybody knows who you are. So there you go. So Jim was the one who actually did the work to try to make all this stuff work. So I just want to make sure, because if you ask me what we put it on and how it worked, I don't understand that stuff. He does it all. I just had the idea. He figured out how to actually do it. So, but some of the really cool uses is voting, right? Rhode Island, one of the things we've been dinged on recently is if you are military overseas and you want to vote in Rhode Island, you have to fax it. Who even has a fax machine in a desert somewhere over there, right? So there are ways that West Virginia has done a great job. Switzerland's done a good job. You can vote on an app on your phone, and it's secure because it's used on the blockchain. Walmart, lettuce, right? Remember how every once in a while the stuff gets contaminated?
We wrote a case study on mangoes. Walmart and IBM in China were able to provide food security by putting the track of a mango on the blockchain.
So you scan a QR code, and it tells you exactly where that lettuce was grown, the bag that it came in, right? And so that's great for many different uses. Chicago, Cook County, Chicago, Illinois, Vermont, they have their land evidence records that they're putting on, right? So instead of having to do a title search for the last, in Rhode Island, it's required to do it for 50 or 100 years, depending on the kind of the transaction you're doing. They're making this conversion to it being on a blockchain, so that information is there, permanent. That's going to save anybody who ever tries to refinance or buy or sell a house hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars. Reno, Nevada, marriage certificates. Think about how many people get married in Reno. When you need your marriage certificate, either to travel or your spouse has passed or whatever, the ability to get it, rather than having to have it FedExed or mailed to you, they now have the ability to send it to you immediately, and it's legally recognized as a form. Those are just some really simple examples, but it's truly incredible the products that can come out of this technology.
There's some huge global examples, too, to build on what Liz just said. If you imagine in India, where people have no record of their ownership of land, and they can be usurped by anyone, any government, any official comes in and says, this isn't your land, they have no proof. And the blockchain allows these things to be registered, your identity, your ownership of your land, and then you have this, what we know is an immutable record, a distributed ledger of facts that are agreed to by a community of governors in a form of what we call consensus. And we'll talk about that later. That's a level of detail you probably
I just got to do
need.
one more.
Yeah, go
My
ahead.
favorite one. Syrian refugees. If you're a doctor and you have a lot of money in the bank, but you've just left your country and you only have the clothing on you, they're trying to do a retinal scan so that you can prove who you are by a scan of your eyeball, who will then show you that you have your doctor's licenses and you have $100,000 in the bank. Think about that. That's crazy.
I love it. We'll have some more examples in a minute, but I want to go back to this energy question because you'll see it in the news all the time. It's the same thing with electric vehicles, too much energy. We really don't stop to quantify what that means. We sometimes don't understand it. And I want to talk about it a little bit more because there are different blockchains, blockchain protocols, blockchain consensus patterns that use different amounts of energy. The older versions used something that you've all heard called mining. And mining is extremely energy consuming. We have a guest tonight who is in the mining business. Where is she, Lee? There she is. And this is a key ingredient. She reminded me earlier, you can't have the Bitcoin network without mining. And this is something that we have to acknowledge and understand. But there are new consensus versions coming along. There are other blockchain and distributed Leah, and a new company called Hedera that use different protocols. One is actually called Gossip. I think that's the technical term. Gossip is how the information is shared. But you'll learn about this as you go along, and I suggest that you do some research on your own. Let's talk more about applications. So we have government, we have food, we have land. Can you think of other examples? Arnell, your students are working on new creative solutions.
Yeah, so for applications, the greatest thing that I'm thinking of is, again, the capture of value for creatives. If that, let's say for this bar, for this restaurant here, where they can have direct access to their customers' data, and they can build a more personal relationship on the blockchain so they can know. So remember like those punch cards that you used to see at different coffee shops when you get 10 punches and then you can't find it, where is it? You know, and then you go home, you do your laundry one day and you have like 1,000 of them. You're like, oh, okay, I own the store now, right? But blockchain technology will allow you and the companies that you frequent to build this really intimate and customized relationship where it's really bespoke and it feels like a tailor-made suit. So that's going to drive the value and appreciation between a customer and the businesses that they support.
And you've heard the term distributed ledgers. It's actually distributing pieces of value. You can have tokenization of a building, tokenization of Arnell's suit, and that's a way of understanding how the distributed ledger distributes value. Yeah.
Yeah, just to build on what Arnell was saying, just a real life example on an application that is like up, running, operational. So like who here listens to the podcasts? So there's an application out there, it's called Fountain. It is a podcasting platform as if you would be engaging with Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to them. But instead, so it's changing, it's over the long term, the idea is changing the business model of how creators monetize. And so right now, podcasters are dependent upon advertising, right, to monetize their audience. And there's like, you could go down a whole rabbit hole of like, is it truly authentic to what their brand is personally? They're trying to like align with brands that are sort of like, put that aside. What Fountain is doing, and it's early, but what they're trying to do is like invert that model where the creator, so the podcaster, has a direct relationship with its listeners, and in real time, and then in this case it's Bitcoin related, and it's leveraging Lightning Network, probably a little advanced for this discussion, but think of it as like the Visa network that sits on top of Bitcoin. It's like literally streams payments from the listener. So if I'm listening to a podcast, I'm streaming payments in real time for consumption of that via Satoshis, which are like the micro, it's like 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin in real time to the creator. So right now, if you listen to podcasts there, like that's happening. You actually also get paid to listen to the podcast. So it's like there's a win-win to that. And now look, it's early. The advertising still exists because this monetization model is like so nascent and so unproven, and there's going to be hundreds of experience in this specific domain. But I highlight that one to like, this is not conceptual. This is actually happening, is built, and people are actually using this stuff.
Thank you. That's great. You can look on the internet at a company called Global Rockstar. They're located in Vienna. And this is a musician who felt that everybody that he knew was getting ripped off. And so he set up a network where rock stars and other musicians can put their music and their art on the blockchain, and from all around the world. And you can look that up and you'll see how it works. And you can send them your songs. And they tokenize your future songs too. So you can be an artist who's selling pieces of your future, and it's your revenue. You might have seen the NFTs for professional athletes. They have NFTs where they can sell pieces of their paraphernalia. They can sell dinner at the ballpark. And Arnell's going to tell me more about that.
Yeah. The future of the movie theater industry. Right now, there are several movies that are being funded directly by their viewers. Potential future viewers are buying the NFTs, and they're going to have exclusive access to watch that movie either in their home, or they'll go to a certain theater on a certain day and they'll be able to watch that with the other owners of those NFTs. And so it's really cutting out the middlemen, the investors that would previously finance. And Adam Smith wrote about this in his book, The Wealth of Nations. He talked about friction-free capitalism. And we now have the technology to build those type of things. So for the music industry, for restaurants, for the movie theater industry, for babysitters, you're going to see babysitters building on the blockchain. And I believe that the arms race should be translated into the fingers race. Because what we're trying to do, Cliff, Gabe, and myself, we're trying to get as many developers as possible, because we believe that the states and the nations that have the most blockchain developers will win. Because it's a numbers game, and that's when the creativity will form it, where you have the creatives, the developers coming together with folks like Liz and Brendan, and that's how we're going. That's why Rhode Island's going to dominate.
Yeah, go Liz.
So I just want to follow up on that. So, so when I got into the space around 2017, we met with like 100 folks in the whole industry to say, what do you need, right? Because we were looking at it from an economic development standpoint. How do we make Rhode Island the hub? They said we need clarity of laws. They want regulation, right? Because that's the only way this Saladas could take off. They're looking for a place to live, so an incubator. So our RI hub, they do blockchain startup week. We had all sorts of plans right before pandemic started, and so everybody's kind of in an influx space, but they want to be together. They want an incubator of sorts. And to Arnell's point, they absolutely need people to do the coding. And there's so many people doing blockchain, making good money, that there's very few teachers for it, right? So that's one of the things that we're hearing is they desperately want people. And so we've been working on all of those things in Rhode Island. And, I can't, if you want to get into that space, definitely talk to Arnell, look at the RI Hub. One thing I did want to bring up real quick is if you're interested in this space, there is a Rhode Island Blockchain Association. They have started to align themselves with the very active Boston Blockchain Association. They have started coming down, and I think they're looking at probably a New England model at some point in the future. But if you're interested in learning more, the Rhode Island Blockchain Association and the Boston Blockchain Association are very, very active with educational courses, and they can connect you with any of this information.
That's great. Education is a huge, huge issue. You're all here to get educated yourselves. You come from communities which also need education. I want to just ask Brendan to tell us about the financial services industry. Does he think they have enough education?
I think just being in this industry, you're implicitly an educator. It's just kind of part of the job. Everyone's doing it because it is, for whatever business you're ultimately trying to run, like, you have to be that bridge. I mean, like I said, our mission statement is bridging the gap into this ecosystem. There is a learning curve, and it's frankly scary again, because like people come at this with the mainstream narratives, which are like crypto and volatility, and it's scary, and so like you have to really I have dozens of conversations like this a month, just like unpacking a lot of these, for people that are in the space, like you kind of forget like what it was like to be like a novice. And I've been in this space since 2017, and I still feel like I'm a novice, right? Spending time with like people like this, and that's awesome because you're just constantly learning. But then it's like you're kind of, but now it's like you're trying to like be the bridge to bring as many people into this like development, like regulation. All these things are like so critically important. But like in the end, the most important job of anyone in this space is education, point blank.
Yeah, and your responsibility is to educate yourself. Think of the acronyms that you go by. You look at the back of the book, and you've got acronyms to look at and vocabulary to look at. I brought a book along, which is one of our research publications. Educate yourselves. Use the resources that are out there, and give Liz your card, and make sure you take advantage of Brendan and Arnell, and don't walk out of the room and think, gee, who were those people? Make sure that you get a hold of the Blockchain Research Institute and take advantage of free information and share it with your organizations. And that's really what Fountainhead has brought you here to do, is to share that information and extend the community of people who understand the potential. So one more question for everybody, the future. What do you see? Is there a metaverse out there? Is there an end to the volatility of Bitcoin? What's the future look like? Let's start with Arnell. Oh, Brendan, or whoever. Just whoever's got the mic.
Yeah, I just think it's like leading to a world that is more sovereign. Like people are going to have more control over their own lives. That's going to empower like this increase in personal responsibility, and people are just going to live like freer, more open, and authentic lives as a result of a lot of this technological adoption that's happening. I mean, it sounds hyperbolic, but like I actually believe that.
I'll say that there are lots of companies, not a million, but like a lot of companies who are trying to use this technology for stuff. But at the end of the day, your government has to try it out for you to feel like there's some sort of legitimacy to it, right? Like that's just the way those things happen. And government has no ability to make mistakes anymore in the world. Whenever we mess up, we get dinged for it tremendously, right? But if we want to try this new technology, you got to let us try it, and you got to let us fail and fail and fail before we get it right? Because then we're going to be able to come out and say, here's the standards that we want to set, here's the rules that other people need to follow, so that it does work across all platforms and we can all agree to it. So I'm always pitching to say, because I'm always asking for money to try to do more in government, and they're always like, I'm just going to give a little bit, So, we're going to keep trying to do that. But you have to allow your government to make some mistakes every once in a while when we're trying new technologies, so that we can work really hard to perfect it to make sure that everybody can do it right. That's my 2 cents.
That's Joan. He's awesome. And no, I'm in serious agreement with what you said there, especially as the government. We expect them to do everything right the first time, but they're really no different than what we're trying to do at CareerDevs. We're experimenting and trying to move the world forward. And, in terms of the future, I want to ping on something that Brendan said. In the Genesis block that was minted January 3rd, 2009, there was a hidden message that Satoshi buried. And it read, it was the title, the front page of the London Financial Times that day. The Chancellor is on the brink of another bailout for the banks, right? And, yes, so you can, but one of the things that we're looking at in terms of being sovereign and having self-custody, we have no control. This is going to give us greater leverage with all governments around the world, a greater say to say, we don't know if that's the best way forward to print money ad nauseum to get us through this with QE1 and QE70. And yet at the same time, we need to have I think it's going to bring the people in their government to the same table. We're going to have a seat at the table. We're going to have a say in the future because we're going to help to build it.
Let's give everybody a hand. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed my role as moderator and meeting these amazing people. And now Jason is going to take the mic away.
Reluctantly. But I'll say we've been doing this a long time. And this is one of the first times my hand actually hurts from all the notes I was trying to write down as all the speakers were talking. I know we're filming it. But what I want to do, and this is one of the prime parts of the evening, is really give the audience an opportunity to ask some questions. And if I know our audience and what I've seen in the past, there's going to be a lot of thought-provoking questions. We'll do our best to get everything in a timely fashion so that we can be able to break for networking, and we've got food and refreshments. So with that, if you raise your hand, I will, as nimbly as possible, come over to you and you can ask your question. So who's up first? Go over. If you want to introduce yourself too, and then the floor is yours.
Yep. Thanks. My name is Ali Job. I've been a software engineer for the past 4.5 years. I'm from Rhode Island, went to school in Boston, but came back to Rhode Island because Rhode Island's great. My question is, thank you. My question is for Brendan. Brendan, you mentioned in your mission statement for your company that you're a founder of, that it is Bitcoin first. Is that correct? I just wanted to ask why. I know that there's a lot of cryptos out there. Some of them people tend to like more than others, and I want to ask why Bitcoin.
Yeah, so what Cantilever is focusing on is it's really the ecosystem at large, but it is Bitcoin first. And we definitely skew. My background is in financial services. I was in commercial banking, venture capital for 15 years. So I spend a lot of my time thinking about like the monetary and financial aspects of this revolution that's happening. And if you just think about Bitcoin relative to the others, is just this, like in my mind, the safest. It's the most decentralized. There's absolute scarcity. There's the Lindy effect, right? It's been along the longest, so it would suggest that it's going to survive longer. And so, as you think, like we are an education business, but we're also an investment business. So we position ourselves as almost like a value investor in the digital asset ecosystem. And so, like value investing would infer, like
risk-adjusted return target. Like, so our view is that there's actually a margin of safety that exists by investing in Bitcoin itself, yes, but more importantly, the applications that are in the layers that are being built on top of that, Lightning and other layer 2s, now companies like Strike that exist at layer 3. It just, it's what we focus on, right? Everyone's got to kind of, because this space is so dynamic and broad, we're just really positioning ourselves as being specialists and trying to deliver risk-adjusted returns to our investors that are, on a relative safer than, the broader digital asset ecosystem at large.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hi, good evening. Mark Ertzikoff. I'm a title attorney, and so when I hear blockchain, my mind goes to real estate transactions. And, so the question that I have is, how does that change anything, right? We've had this recording system for hundreds of years. What changes with blockchain with regards to real estate?
So allow me to geek out with Mark for a second, because he and I speak the same language. So Mark, it basically eliminates the need for title insurance because you don't ever have to prove the title again, right? So as a former title insurance person, like that's what it is. Now we're many, many years away from it, but when you have the land evidence records on a title where they can never be changed and it will always be seen, there's no need to do any kind of a full title search, just a rundown that's publicly available and simple and easy to interpret. So that's the big concern, right? So there's got to be some world there where there's still some protection. So that's a big issue in that market.
Again, a little bit of, you hear the stories of fraud and everything else, and I think that right now the current system that's been working, and yes, technology is going to help. But I still think that there's going to be some reaction between those that have, those that don't have, and what happens in the title when something goes awry. Who knows if those records get lost and how can we prove those?
Well, so that's the whole part of it, right? It's not lost. There's a trust that's built, and the records can never be lost. That's what's so different and innovative about the subject, and that's why the title insurance industry is working really hard to make sure they still stay relevant in the closing transaction process. Yeah, it's transparency. It's open for everyone. Happy to talk about it. We can geek out on another time.
Just wait here.
Hi, and this can be for anyone on the panel. I know you talked about and we're addressing the climate impact and the large carbon footprint that creating blockchain cryptocurrency may have. I know you talked about it being a new industry, that experimentation is the first thing in order to understand it and create it, and then you kind of figure it out. But with industries such as the automotive industry and commercial farming, where we did the same thing and now half a century later are dealing with drastic catastrophic effects and now trying to figure out how to regulate them, how much of the industry, the crypto or blockchain industry's money is being put into mitigating those effects as opposed to globally scaling something that is right now a small thing that is already contributing to climate change?
I think I know the answer to that question.
I mean, we could do a whole another 2-hour panel on mining. So try and hit the high points here. But yeah, it's an important conversation to be having. And I think, like, not to get too, Ethereum right now is moving from proof of work to proof of stake for like literally that exact reason, right? They're changing the entire governance structure of their network to be more ESG friendly. And so we're all incentivized to like have this planet continue to be, satiating us all. Mining, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to kind of approach it, but like Bitcoin mining, you have to think about the relative value that it's providing society relative to its impact, right? People like to throw out the idea of, Bitcoin uses more energy than small countries, and that like empirically is true, but also like Bitcoin uses less energy than it takes to run like dryers in your house, right? So, and that's a pretty good use of energy, right? And so if you think Bitcoin doesn't have value as a monetary good and an apolitical store value asset and potential to be issued to your account, then any energy invested in it is a waste. So it's almost like you have to think about, you have to understand the merits of Bitcoin to then be able to ascertain and evaluate, is the energy expenditure being invested into the miners are providing the decentralized security of the network for it to be worthwhile. The last point I'll make is there's a lot of, I spent a decent amount of time in Texas of late, and there's this really interesting fusion that's happening between Bitcoin mining and energy companies, and there's big problem with energy distribution is just load balancing, right? When you're building out a grid, you basically have to build the grid for the hottest day in August when everyone's blasting their AC, and there's a lot of excess capacity in energy production that actually just gets wasted over time. And what we're now seeing is like the Bitcoin mining industry creating these commercial agreements with energy producers to basically load balance. So Bitcoin miners turn on when there's more energy being produced that's being produced, and it's either going to be used or it's going to be wasted. And so Bitcoin miners are basically turned on when there's excess supply versus demand, and turned off when there's more demand than is being supplied. The last piece, I sort of shut up. The last piece of this is you think about the incentives for miners. There's actually the economic incentive for miners is to generate energy at the lowest possible cost. What's the cheapest energy? Solar, wind, hydro, and nuclear, right? And so over time, with appropriate regulation and legislation to support it, the economic incentive is for Bitcoin miners to actually harness the cheapest form of energy, because that's the biggest expense. And so one could argue, you play this out, that the best Bitcoin miners are going to be in event, almost accelerating the move to clean, green energy.
I just want to do 5 seconds on that. Economics or greed, what he just said there, is the #1 driver, getting these costs down. If you think about the initial cars, they didn't have mufflers, they didn't have catalytic converters, there were huge plumes of smoke going behind them. But gas mileage was horrible. The automobile is a very highly refined piece of science today. But in the beginning, people were burning cars, throwing rocks at them, horse manure, you name it, because they were unsightly, they weren't good for society. There were bands of rebels going around and just destroying cars. And we have that sort of today, where the people rebelling against the use of this new form of technology. But it will self-correct. We have to allow it to play its course.
Yeah, and I want to encourage you to believe that there are market forces at work that agree with you that we want to accelerate solutions to this problem of energy consumption, not just rationalize it, but actually improve the way the blockchain is produced. And consensus, different kinds of consensus have a lot to do with that, and we can look into that if you need to understand it better. How many people do you have to have looking at the data, proving the blockchain to make it real? And the fewer you need, the fewer miners you need, the fewer energy you use. I mentioned the data from the accounting study. Why are these companies not adopting blockchain? Because ESGs are very important to the shareholders of these companies. And in Liechtenstein, the Bankers Association does not want to adopt blockchain yet, because net zero climate impact is #1 in their mission. And they can't afford to be seen as being irresponsible with energy. So this all comes together with market forces. And Brendan is right, there are all kinds of lenses for looking at this, and we think that it will market correct.
Next question.
So what we're going to do is, because we're up against time, we're going to allow our panelists, hopefully will stick around and be able to address some more questions. I want to first, again, Give a round of applause for our panelists. I mean, come on, it was fantastic. And a couple points I want to highlight. So first of all, I want to give another special shout out to Liz Tanner. Not only congratulations on the new role, but you have, I was thinking about it as I was sitting there, you were at the first event, and you were here when David and I were literally sitting at a kitchen table, not a garage, trying to figure out what the ethos and what Fountainhead might look like and what we'd evolve into. And I've got to tell you, even from the early days, think about what Liz and others have talked about, international business, looking at Estonia. That was one of the core elements that brought us together here. We were looking at how do we entice talent and entrepreneurs and folks from all over the world to consider Rhode Island as a hub. And these panelists and the discussion they're talking about this evening and the core topics and the peer-to-peer growth, if I may use one of the buzzwords myself in this room, is all a testament to that and what we seek to do. So again, on behalf of all of us, Joan, Arnell, Liz, Brendan, thanks for that. By the way, Brendan, we were the ones that gave Fountain the idea for their podcast name. We didn't want to talk openly about it, but we did consult with them openly initially. And one other thing I just want to say, right, if you think about what's happening down the pike and what makes these events special, certainly our sponsors are key, right? And every year we have a good slew of them. This year we're thankful for the Washington Trust Company and the Hire. But we also have done something a little different that for many of you who didn't come to the last event, you will have noticed you have an app and a QR code when you come in and you scan. That app is a way to make our organization and our ecosystem more efficient. It allows us to engage in different ways with all of you and make sure that we are providing services and events that align not only with the needs and demands of Rhode Islanders, but as you heard earlier, the stuff that we're doing globally now in a lot of our virtual sessions and monthly spotlights. And one of the features of that app, and you'll see some QR codes, is there's a function to donate. We encourage all of you, we put on these events, we rely on our sponsors, but every little bit counts. So if you have some time tonight and you enjoy attending our events, do feel free to make a donation, and we'll definitely display the gratitude as we go forward. To close out, also I'd like to say you'll hear more news from us about our famous year-end event, which is going to be happening again in December. Many of you, I see a lot of familiar faces, again a lot of new faces, so stay tuned for that as we get ready to make the announcements, and I hope to see you all there. And outside of that, please proceed to the back of the room where we've got refreshments, drinks. It's a chance for the panelists who are sticking around, you can ask more questions. Otherwise, getting to know people that are part of the community. So again, thanks for the time this evening. Have a great rest of the summer. Hope you have some good holiday. And cheers to all. Thanks.
And thank you to Fowler Joan.
We've got lucky and she braved a very big commute to be here. So thank you, Joan.